What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Miltrick Media. I'm here with Philadelphia and New York City songwriter Casey Raniero. Casey, how's it going? Thank you for being here.
It's going well. Thank you for having me.
Yes, of course. So you are a songwriter from Philadelphia and also New York City. You play all over the tri-state area. So let's talk about your upbringing. So were you born and raised in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania?
No, I like it when people think I was. But if you watch The Office, I was born and raised in Wilkes-Barre, which is right next to Scranton.
You're right by Dunder Mifflin.
Yeah.
Iconic Dunder Mifflin. So currently you're based out of, you go back and forth in the tri-state area, but also, so then you moved down to Philadelphia when?
When I was 18 for college. I went to Temple University.
Oh, nice. How was that? What was it like going there?
I loved Temple.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think at the time it was the ninth largest
Oh, good.
ninth largest university in the United States.
Oh, wow.
Which I need to meet about 50 new people every day or I get stir crazy.
Yeah.
So for me, that was great.
You're on an extroverted mission.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that. So Temple is a big school?
Oh, yeah.
More than like 20K students?
That's a good question. I don't remember anymore, but I would say probably.
Because like my school, we were talking about before, you have a performance coming up upstate in Oneonta.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I went to college. It was a small school. University had 6,000 kids.
Yeah.
So for a school that was small, but my high school in Staten Island, we had 3,800.
Wow.
So you were meeting a lot of people. My graduating class was 720. So I felt like my college was so minuscule compared to, let's say, a place like Temple. I feel like Temple must have been fun because you were able to meet so many people. And even you were going to school in Philadelphia at college. So what was that like as a musician? So when did you play your first show in Philadelphia as a songwriter?
That's a good question. If we're counting open mics.
We're counting open mics.
Okay. Then it was September of freshman year. I remember I had this attitude back then, and I think I have a version of this attitude now, but it's probably a little bit different. But back then, I had this attitude, this belief of like, I'll just make myself someone that people pay attention to. I won't ask. I'll just host things and people will show up and then I'll be there making music. And that's how it's going to work. So I just decided to throw an open mic outside at the bell tower, which is just where everybody congregates, with no speakers or anything because we couldn't. I thought we could, but so just outside open mic. And then a couple months later, I threw a rooftop music festival at my friend's apartment. It was not legal and almost nobody showed up, but we had a PA system. So everybody had to listen around the whole campus.
Yeah. So this was your friend in college who was like their off-campus residence, basically?
Yeah, right across the street from my dorm. We had a couch on the roof. And,
oh, wow. Yeah. So you talked about even right before that question where you're on a mission to meet 50 new people a day.
Yeah.
And meeting new people and connecting with new people is so important in the music industry and trying to make it as a musician. So what inspired that principle of yours? What made you set out on that mission where I need to meet as many new people as possible?
I think it was when I was a freshman in college, the way that pretty much overnight my life changed so that I was in this situation where I was meeting all these new people. It just made me a better, happier person, like the best version of myself. And just seeing that undeniable juxtaposition between who I am when I'm not surrounded by people versus who I am when I am surrounded by people. It's just like an undeniable personality trait.
Yeah. So going to a school like Temple, where it was such a massive school, do you feel that it did shift your personality? Like, did it kind of lit that motivation up where it's like, okay, it's go time?
I think so. Because I remember at the beginning of freshman year feeling, even though I enjoyed being in that atmosphere, I remember feeling overwhelmed because I felt like my life was a 24/7 rave. And I actually remember counting, I was only alone for 3 instances in the whole first semester. And each moment that I was by myself was about 2 minutes.
Yeah. That sounds fun, though.
Yeah.
Sounds like a unique experience, especially as an 18-year-old.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So even before that, before college, were you performing music as a solo artist at different live events?
I was, yeah. And it was more solo. Like now I'm a solo artist, but I'm kind of not. But back then, I think that's a big reason too that I love meeting so many people, because so many of the people I meet are musicians and I love collaborating. But yeah, back then I would play at the bookstore and stuff like that a lot, like at the Barnes & Noble.
Oh, cool.
And like the abandoned mall. And I went back to the abandoned mall during the pandemic because everywhere in the city was closed. So yeah, I was playing like venues like that.
Yeah. How old were you when you played your first show as a musician?
I was 16. No, I was 15.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
This summer going into 9th grade.
So what was that performance like, and how did you feel once that concluded? Did you feel on a rush? Did you feel upset? Did you feel like, all right, now it's set in stone, I need to pursue being a musician?
I always knew that I needed to pursue it. But I have a background like as a kid in musical theater. So I think for a while I thought I would do that. But I love writing, and that became something I couldn't like not do. So I think it was then that I felt like the writing thing was set in stone, and also the piano thing. But I didn't feel a rush. I probably felt, I think, like not much, but if anything, a little bit upset. Because I wasn't good. My voice was okay, but like my first song I ever wrote publicly and played in public as a 15-year-old, it was called Hopeless Crush. Like I wasn't writing about like,
yeah, but so what? You got to get out there. You got to write.
Yeah,
you got to break that threshold.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's true. And then I had this little synthesizer that was like probably $25 from Toys R Us or something, and it sounded.
Toys R Us got good gear.
Yeah,
can't hate on it.
And it was just like very, very like Radio Disney, but not of the caliber of Radio Disney.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You never know, though. Listen. But that's cool, because at least now it led to where you are now.
Right.
You needed that to
absolutely
do all the shows you're doing now, all the content you're making now, where you're getting yourself out there. And now also that's a perfect transition to the performances you're doing now. You promote it heavily on your Instagram. You do live performances in Washington Square Park in Manhattan and also Central Park.
Yeah.
So when did that start, those busking performances in Washington Square Park?
That started in April, just because when the spring happened, I like to make spring resolutions. And I made a bunch of resolutions just about engaging with life more actively and more intentionally. And for me, a big part of that was busking, just because I've always been super interested in that as a concept, but during the pandemic and everything, like I couldn't. So I was like, oh, well, I'm making all these resolutions about engaging with life. It's super nice out. The pandemic's over. Like, obviously it's time to do that. Yeah. In Washington Square Park, that's where the magic happens.
That's a great park. There's so much going on.
Yeah.
There's so many musicians, bands. They just go there and jam.
Oh yeah.
It's really cool atmosphere.
Yeah.
So that started in April of 2021. That's, yeah.
Oh, April just now.
Oh, April of 2022.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first time doing it was April of 22. Like you said, stuff was opening up more and you had spring resolutions.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what else was on your resolution list in terms of music besides starting those live performances?
Working on another album.
Cool.
Which is going to be, I think, probably more upbeat. The first one was very sad, very down-tempo, very acoustic. And this, I think the songs are going to be released more slowly. And they're going to be catchier, dancier. Everyone's going to be like a little album of its own.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So when you're releasing music, you have in the past and you have some stuff loaded up, ready to go down the line. Do you think that it's more important to release individual singles to build up anticipation, to build the brand? Or do you think that you can just release an album and that can have the same effect? What do you think?
I think a little of both. I think in 5 years, I'm going to be at least a C-list celebrity. And at that point, I'll just drop an album and my fans will care.
Yeah.
And I think right now, I have a few people who would care. But realistically, I think anybody who is not like a star probably would get the most benefit out of releasing things gradually as singles or even as EPs.
Yeah, I agree. If you're trying to build a following, to build up your brand as a musician, if you're starting out, it could be easier, more lucrative to release singles and EPs.
Yeah.
Yeah, not easier. It'd probably be more beneficial to release stuff gradually as singles or EPs, and then you could always release an album once you have a little bit more of a foundation.
Yeah, and I think about the artists that I follow and how they got me hooked and how they keep me interested. Because some artists don't. Some artists are more like phases I go through. And I like to think about the marketing strategy of why that might be. And I do think that for the most part, I get hooked based on singles and I stay interested based on singles.
I feel with me, that is the same thing. I'm more attracted to certain artists' catalog after I'm roped in with singles compared to, let's say, a whole project. Like once I really become invested in an artist's career and I'm really in love with their music, then I'll dive into the whole projects.
Right.
Yeah. And that's cool you mentioned the marketing thing because I'm really into that as well. So when you study that for your own career with marketing and taking tips from other artists' trajectory, what do you look for in terms of the marketing?
One thing I look for is how to strike a balance, because this is something I feel I'm still getting the hang of. Striking a balance between being vulnerable in your lyrics, because I think about that with singles is like, this is your introduction. This 2 minutes or 2.5 minutes is you're, in a sense, informing your fans of who you are with a hook. But also keeping an air of mystery and like, because you want people to be able to project onto you a little bit who they are. So yeah, and I think something I've found is like, that's so hard that you do need to know you're probably not going to be able to market to everyone across all demographics and all psychographics. Because I think about that a lot too. Like,
I do as well.
Yeah.
So you can't always.
Right.
It's hard.
And I don't know if you want to, because I find that the artists who do, their fans, it's like they have more fans, but the fans they have are like, oh yeah, that's a good artist. They're not like enthusiastic.
They have more of a possible reach, but they're not as invested.
Right.
As more of a hyper-focused core audience.
Right. They're
not as diehard.
Right. And I think that the artists that I admire and learn from, they know who their core audience is, like to a T.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. So when you're developing your career as a musician, do you think it is more important to have a smaller, more diehard audience or to have a wider, more spread out audience?
For me, definitely smaller, more diehard, because that's how you get C-list celebrity status.
Let's talk about that. So you've had that a lot in your content recently. What is that? A C-list celebrity status, the KC Raniero challenge and quest. What is that? And when did that start?
That started probably about a year ago. I kept on telling everybody, in 3 months, I'm going to be a C-list celebrity. And it was kind of like a kid waking up for school, like, give me 5 more minutes. Because like 3 months would go by and people would be like, so are you famous yet? Yeah. And I'd be like, no, just give me 2-3 more months. And I promise, next time you see him, I'll be famous. And it was a joke. But I think almost all jokes have a grain of truth. Yeah. And so I thought to myself, like, why do I continue to make this joke and like continue to insist upon this jokingly? Probably because I think it'd be really cool. So why don't I just lean into it? Yeah.
But it kind of goes cool with your brand because KC, C-list celebrity. Yeah.
That's true. Yeah.
It ties in nicely. But why not A-list or B-list? Is there a categorical definition? Where did C-list come from?
C-list?
Why not A-list?
Because I think A-list is probably, you have like people breaking into your house.
That's true. Yeah. That's not as fun. That's more stressful.
Yeah.
Yeah. You just want to keep doing the fun stuff.
Right.
You know what I mean? So let's go back to the busking. So when you're preparing for a performance in Washington Square Park, these live performances, how do you get ready? And how do you set up your stage and your equipment?
I used to bring a microphone, but So I used to not bring a microphone because it's not legal, but everybody else around me had one. So then I was like, all right, so I guess it kind of is legal.
Yeah.
But then like depending on everything that was going on, sometimes I'd get asked to put it away, sometimes not. So now I usually don't bring one. And it's just I bring a generator because I got the piano, so I need instead of an outlet.
Oh, so you bring a power generator.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
That's cool.
And sometimes the police mix it up with a speaker and they're like, you can't have that speaker. And I'm like, okay, I won't have a speaker. And
yeah. Because I've never bussed before.
Right.
And it's something I've been interested in. And it's cool. I've never bussed before. It's something I'm interested in. And to learn, how can you get it set up? How does it work? So did you need a permit for all that? Or no, you just go?
Oh, you need a permit if you can use a mic if you have a permit. But it's so expensive depending, because some days I've made $50 in 3 hours and I've made $10 in 10 hours.
Yeah.
So if it's not a lucrative day, then I just lost money just to have a microphone.
Yeah.
So what I do, I don't use a permit.
Yeah.
You could sell your merch too if you have a permit.
Oh, okay. So
yeah.
So then when you said you have a power generator, you bring your keyboard. So sometimes then do you just bring the keyboard with your generator and no mic?
Yeah.
And you're good to go. You slip under the radar?
Yeah. Well, they let you do whatever you want if you don't have a mic.
Oh, but then with the piano, isn't that going through some sort of PA or amplifier?
Oh no, my piano just goes through itself.
Oh, sick.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. So yeah, it's like an acoustic piano kind of. But,
yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
So what goes into your live set list when you're performing in Manhattan? So when you're doing these performances in Washington Square Park and Central Park, what is your set list currently looking like?
My set list when I'm doing those kind of sets are the more upbeat things. Welcome to New York by Taylor Swift. And the other one I love, I do it like on the hour, is I Like Me Better by Lauv, if you know that.
Good song. Yeah.
Because Lauv is one of the 4 artists who I've based my current, like, what I'm trying to do off of. Because he went to NYU and he used to busk right in Washington Square. And he wrote that song about his NYU girlfriend, like, during that time.
Yeah.
And, like, he mentions New York right in it. And people, because I'm right across the street from NYU, so people always stop and they're like, oh, wow, it's Lauv. Or sometimes they'll even say his real, like, non-stage name.
Yeah. That's so sick. So tips and best practices for other musicians wanting to get into busking. Mm-hmm. How do you recommend people get started? And how do you set it up where then you could accept tips from people, you could gain the most exposure? Mm-hmm. What is your advice to musicians out there wanting to get into busking in Manhattan?
Embrace being uncomfortable, and understand that not only will you feel uncomfortable because it's a strange setting, because no one asked you to show up. You're just singing into the abyss. And you will be ignored a lot. But that's okay, because it doesn't matter how good you are. It's such a mix of people that it just doesn't matter. You will be ignored, and then other people will think you're amazing. But also you need to understand that really strange, ridiculous antics will happen in front of you and around you.
That's a good point.
Which I think is great practice for, like, if you're playing like a stadium show and people jump on the stage and stuff like that. Yeah. So it's practice. It's like focusing. And also just keep in mind that it's a communal thing. So like, it's very likely and probable that other artists will set up pretty much right next to you. And you might love what they do and you might not. And it really doesn't matter because they might not like what you do, but you're both doing your best.
Yeah.
And you're in it together, and you should embrace that, because it's sort of like, in my opinion, I think artists are like a family by nature.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. That's really cool. So when you're performing anywhere, does your set list contain a mix of covers and originals? Is it all originals or exclusively covers?
Whenever I busk, it's both. But I do like unless people are crowded around me, I like to do covers when I busk to get attention. But then once they crowd around, like I did in the video, I say, "Do you want to hear an original?" And they say yes.
Yeah.
But when it's when it's a show, I only do originals.
I got you. That's a cool way to get people attracted and rope them in. Because if you do some covers, then you throw in an original, you're building that common ground.
Yeah.
And then you get them invested. Then they're like, yeah, let's hear an original. We've heard this artist perform a song we love.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Even with busking, I feel like that's one of the hardest performances to execute because compared to a performance you're putting on, even an open mic, you're busking, like you said, in a strange setting. No one necessarily asked you to be there.
Right.
Life is going on around you.
Right.
Curveballs could be around you. I feel like that hardens you for performances down the line. Would you agree? I feel like it makes you a better performer.
Absolutely.
It makes you a better performer because it's a more challenging environment. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Yeah. I noticed that and I think this is something most soloists struggle with. When you're a soloist and you're on stage at an actual show, talking to the audience is so awkward because, it's like, okay, I played that. Now here's another song. It's like you can't do the banter with your band. And that's always been something that I felt like I stumbled through for years. But after like a month busking and I think it clicked with me. Oh, the audience is actually, now I think of it like the audience is just people on the sidewalk in Washington Square Park.
Yeah.
So now I just talk to them like they're my friends because there's no different, like it's people. It doesn't matter if you're on a stage or a sidewalk, but in our heads it does.
Yeah.
But then when you go and perform on the sidewalk enough, you lose that distinction.
Yeah.
And then you're much more comfortable on actual stages.
It's like crowd work. You see comedians doing crowd work when they interact with the crowd and do improvisation. It's kind of similar to that banter you may implement between songs during your set.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
totally.
A whole different art form in itself. You're trying to keep them engaged, you know what I mean? It's like, you're like, all right, I played music. How's it going? How's your day going?
Right.
To the audience, yeah. So Taylor Swift is a big influence in your work. You've mentioned it numerous times.
Yeah.
In your social media content, why is Taylor Swift such a huge influence to you?
Taylor Swift, I feel, raised me. I got her, I got a CD like for Christmas one of hers when she was like very new and I was very young. And I thought it was cool. I thought it was interesting, but I didn't really care. And I was never a huge country fan. I always kind of thought crossover was cool. But I wasn't a big country fan. But I remember when 1989 came out, I think because I love synth pop, I love dancey things. That was when, as a musician, just sonically, she like caught my attention. And I realized like she just, not even lyrically, not even talking about her persona, just as a musician, I thought like she's really doing something different and transcending genre. But I think Shake It Off was probably the song where I was like, oh, like this person is actually masquerading as like a shallow pop star, but like she's actually pretty deep. Like, did you all hear what she just said in Shake It Off? This is a good life lesson. And then Reputation, it was all about like just watching her like self-love journey. And yeah, I just feel like she raised me. She taught me everything I know about not everything. She taught me a very, very large portion of what I know about resilience and like chasing dreams. And it's like, she's like a real life Hannah Montana. I just said like a lot of things and a lot of it was not coherent, but I'll summarize it.
No, you did.
I'll summarize it with this. My favorite Taylor Swift song of all time is New Romantics from 1989, because I think it summarizes her whole everything and everything that she stands for. And like in the chorus is just like, I can build a castle out of all the bricks they threw at me. And it's super dancey, but also like what she just said is a very, very good affirmation.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right. You mentioned resiliency. Mm-hmm. When pursuing a career as a musician and trying to make it, how important do you think is resiliency?
I think it's the most important thing. Because I don't think that I can name a single artist. I probably can't name a single person, but especially not an artist who hasn't had at least a handful of moments where they're like really sad and thinking like, why am I doing this? All I ever do is like lose out on, like everyone, especially artists, have those moments. And I've been on both sides of those conversations. And whenever I hear anyone say anything like that, and whenever I think that, I always tell this to myself, like, that's unavoidable. And successful people, the people that we admire or we look at and we want to be where they are, they're not there because they didn't have these moments. They're there because they embraced these moments. They weren't afraid of these moments. They took them in stride, and they probably had more of these moments than all the rest of us. That's why they're there.
Yeah, 100%. And you talked about you've been on both sides of the coin. So how do you digest and get past those moments? What do you tell yourself in your mind to process it all?
I have a playlist called Affirmations.
That's cool, because we've all been through that.
Yeah.
We've all been through that because you're pursuing this kind of career.
Yeah.
So you have a playlist.
Yeah.
What's on that playlist?
New Romantics by Taylor Swift. Welcome to New York. Is Welcome to New York? Yeah. Welcome to New York by Taylor Swift. Just because it's like, it brings me back to like that mentality of, oh yeah, this is why I'm here. Free Woman by Lady Gaga. Just things that you could dance to. Yeah, very corny, Disney, upbeat. It's all very dancey. What else? Those are the big ones.
That's the core of that playlist.
Yeah.
So you mentioned you're a big fan of synth pop.
Oh yeah.
What is it about that genre that made you such a fan of that style of music?
I think it's because this sounds strange, but I don't like pianos. I play the piano because of circumstance, because there was a piano in my house. But I spent such a long time wishing that I could take my skill on the piano and put it on the guitar.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
And sometimes I say that to people, usually guitarists will say, well, just pick up a guitar and play it. And I mean, I could, but at this point, it's like part of the whole shtick is, the keys. So it would be a totally different shtick. And I used to try that a little bit with the ukulele, but it didn't have the same impact. But I've tried to get into piano music, and it always makes me want to fall asleep because I like to dance. So synth pop was the first time that I heard people using the keys to make people want to dance.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, because you are a pianist and a songwriter, and like your live performances, your vocals, I notice, have that kind of operatic delivery, which is cool. And like
Thanks.
You're shredding on the piano.
Thank you.
That's really interesting how you're saying like you'd rather, if you could, translate over to guitar. So you had piano in your house growing up. So that was the first instrument you were exposed to?
Yeah.
Piano?
Yeah.
So how old were you when you started playing piano?
I was 8.
You were 8?
But I quit because I could not stand taking lessons.
Yeah. We were all, who wanted to do
Right.
lessons when you're a kid?
Right.
I understand exactly where you're coming from. So then what about with singing? How old are you when you started singing?
Like when I was born.
You were born, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But I started taking lessons when I was 13. And that's why I have like the operatic sound, because I'm
Yeah.
a classically trained singer.
That's awesome. When it comes to singing, do you think it's important for people to do you think when it comes to singing, will people advance further as a singer if they invest in lessons, or can it all be self-taught?
I have like a hybrid answer. I think that to be a great vocalist, I think it's very difficult to do without lessons. And I've met people who've achieved that. I don't necessarily think I would have. But I also really, really admire artists who I don't think are great vocalists. Like, I don't really think Taylor Swift is known for being a great vocalist. I think it's her writing and her stage presence and her guitar, everything else. So I think to be a fantastic musician, you don't need lessons, but to be a fantastic vocalist, you very well might.
Yeah. So Taylor Swift is a huge influence. So is Lauv. You mentioned his debut project.
Yeah.
That was a big influence to you. What are your other biggest musical influences?
Rachel Platten is another one who's on the Affirmations playlist because she Fight Song.
Yeah, that was a top 40 hit a few years ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember hearing that all over the place.
Yeah, and she is a huge not necessarily so much her music. I like her music a lot. It's not like to the level of Taylor Swift or Lauv, but her story, because she was in New York dragging a piano everywhere.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like Sarah Bareilles, another pianist, who she's not from New York, but now she's here.
Yeah.
So basically anyone who has physically dragged a piano through the streets of New York.
Yeah. You relate to that journey. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Also,
yeah.
Tony Bennett and like Frank Sinatra, the whole Rat Pack, because they're I feel like we're in like similar genres because of like the whole jazz influence kind of thing. And also they all formed on the streets of Hoboken, New York, like the whole area.
Yeah. When you're setting up for these performances, do you drive in? Do you take the subway and carry your gear? What do you do?
I drive.
You drive?
And it's painful.
How do you find, you got to let the audience know, how does Casey Raniero find parking in Manhattan?
I get a lot of parking tickets. I probably got to get a parking pass.
You got to get a parking pass?
Yeah.
When you make it as a C-list celebrity, you got to hit them back up with the receipts and say, listen, I think you should take the ticket back. Because
Right.
I was doing it for the career. Come on.
Right. Right.
So with your music career and in your content, what do you want the audience's first impression to be? What is your brand? What is your mission as an artist?
I think my mission is resilience. I think that's my brand. Because my album that I have out, my debut album, Toxic Phantom, it definitely on the surface is a dark, sad, kind of sultry album. But I define the Toxic Phantom as something that we all have, sort of like a shadow self. And it is the being that breathes life and motivation into us all. Because without the darkness, there is no light. And that's a very cliche thing. But how I think that manifests in real life and practice is that I think that everything negative that happens within us, around us, to us is, if we want, the catalyst for us to do beautiful things.
Yeah, that's a great point. So with your debut album, Toxic Phantom, was it self-produced? Did you record it at a studio?
I recorded it in my friend's basement.
Oh, wow.
In one take. Everything
Cool.
was in one take.
Oh, wow. And how long did it take to complete the recording for that debut album?
2 hours.
2 hours?
2 hours.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. What was your favorite part about the whole process? What was your biggest memory from that time in your life?
Writing one of the songs on the way there.
Oh,
So it was actually going to be an EP, but my songs are so long that I got the EP back and I saw how long it was. And then I messaged my friend and I said, hey, this is technically an album. So how about I just toss another 4 songs on? So that was the second hour. And it'll be debut album. And so on the way there, I wanted to put another love song on. And so I whipped one up in the car. And there's a love song that you'll know which one it is because it's the one that you'll never hear me play at a show. And that's because I don't remember it. It was just something that I felt that day. And I wanted to timestamp the moment.
Yeah. You hear a lot of great songs that some of them were written, it took weeks and months. Some, it came to the songwriter within an hour.
Yeah.
So what was it, 8 songs in total on the project?
Yeah.
So you banged it out in 2 hours. So how much pre-production went into your debut album in order to get that finalized and recorded in 2 hours?
What
was your pre-production process like?
I would say, I didn't think of it this way at the time, but I would say it took years. Because some of the songs, like the youngest song on there, Day Of, oldest song I wrote when I was 18. 17. So every time and those songs evolved so much over the years. At one point, the one was a metal song.
Nice.
So I would say every time I performed any of that in public, and I was watering it like a plant kind of thing. So
that's cool. So what's next for Casey Raniero moving forward? What is next for your music career in 2022 and beyond?
The journey to becoming a C-list celebrity, whatever that entails. But really, I think the this summer, there's going to be something dancey, much dancier than anything that was on Toxic Phantom. Probably some kind of happy love song that doesn't sound sad and like yearning. Might be something I try to pitch to Radio Disney. I'm trying to go back to like that kind of, because that's like what I listen to.
You're going back to the roots. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Listen, maybe they'll pick it up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So what shows do you have coming up?
Yeah. It's a great question. So yes, this Wednesday in Brooklyn at Bar Freda, I have a show at 7. And I also have a show in Oneonta in New York State on Tuesday for anyone who wants to make a trip. And
that's the alma mater.
And then, we were talking about that before.
That's cool. Yeah, it's a cool town.
And then Philly, June 10th at Sankofa House, I believe it's called. I have a show there. Yeah.
Nice. So you have new music coming out toward the end of the year. You have some shows coming up. Where can we find you on social media? Let the audience know all of your social media handles. Yes.
Instagram. It's simpler now because a bunch of people yelled at me to take away the period and underscore. So it's gone now. Yeah. So Instagram is KCRANIERO. And Facebook is K Constance Raniero. And not too much on social media because I don't know if I trust myself with all that. But you can find me on the main ones and most importantly, Spotify, Casey Raniero, or check out my EDM alter ego, just Kate Raniero, just one letter different.
Oh, you got some records out on that? You put out some EDM projects?
Yeah.
Oh shit.
Yeah, so there just don't type in the C, just the letter K and then my last name, and it'll come right up. And I made all the cover art for all that too.
That's sick. Well, listen, now you know where to find her. Check her out on Instagram, Casey Raniero, and on Facebook, K Constance Raniero, right?
Yep.
Check out her debut album, Toxic Phantom. It's on all streaming services right now as we speak. And check her out on Instagram. She's posting content from her shows. Casey, thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you guys for checking out another episode of Miltrick Media, and we will see you all soon.